Elijah and Hayley are kind of dealing with that grief, you know. I mean, especially I think Klaus and Hayley having to kind of give away their daughter. I mean, I can't imagine anything more traumatic or heartbreaking than that. And it's just, you know, how the three of them are all dealing with that, and also dealing with the grief of that kind of hope. Is it literally her name? But I think they all were really excited about, I mean, they've all lived these chaotic, crazy, unusual lives, and I think they were all excited to have a bit of normality and to have this kind of common thread of just looking after a child, which is the most, you know, natural human thing anyone could do, and that was kind of ripped away from all of them, and it was their one last chance of living kind of somewhat normal lives. And now they're kind of back where they started, if not worse, because now they're kind of, not only do they all want to kind of seek vengeance on whoever kind of did this to their to baby Hope, but their town and their home is kind of under siege, and they need to protect that as well. And there's also, they want to create a home for the baby. They don't want to all feel like this is the be-all, and the child didn't die. They just want to create an environment that is safe enough to one day in the future have that kind of normal life that they've all craved. It's kind of a hard one. You know, the problem is that Hayley met Elijah in a very specific time in her life. You know, when she just found out she was pregnant, and she was in this kind of awkward, weird transition period of kind of between young girl and kind of finding out exactly who she is. And I think now that the baby's gone, she's terrified that that part of her that he was in love with isn't there anymore. So she's questioning herself and you know, where she belongs and exactly who she is. And I also just don't think romance is her priority right now, and I think she's kind of closed herself off a little bit to feeling anything. She's kind of become quite cold and hard, and she's almost looking to Klaus a little bit, which probably isn't the best thing to do when you're looking for, you know, therapy advice. But, you know, she's looking at the way he deals with things, and it's kind of a sad, hard way, but she finds that, you know, that kind of closing off kind of way of dealing with the you know, grief of the child is the way that she's able to handle what happens. You know, I think it was not just the baby. I think it's the fact that Hayley or Andrea comes from this, like, you know, line of royalty. I think that's the main thing, in that most of those kind of family members have either left or they've been killed, and the fact that she's kind of the remaining member of that particular family, still, you know, they have this kind of level of respect for her, because everyone else, there's no one else there to look, you know, look for. But so I think they still kind of are treating her with respect, but she's going to have to fight for they treat her with, like, I think they're just cautious because they want to treat her with respect because of her family, but she's also now half of an enemy because she's half vampire, and they, you know, it's their sworn enemy. So, you know, even though it's not her fault that now she's a hybrid, they're kind of treating her like, well, you know, now you're, you know, partly our enemy, and we don't know if we can trust you. And so she's got to kind of try to, you know, get them to kind of take her side again, and it's going to take a little bit, and she needs to kind of get her strength back to kind of prove to them that she can be their leader, and that's something that we kind of explore in the first few episodes. I mean, I always wanted to be a vampire on the show, so now I kind of get the best of both worlds, and it's just kind of fun to be one of the very few hybrid characters, because everyone else is either a vampire. I feel kind of special. I don't know, vampires are always a little bit more mysterious. You know, I love being a werewolf, but a werewolf's a bit more like wild and rugged. There's something kind of threatening about a vampire, and I thought that was always kind of cool. That's why I wanted to be a vampire.
You know, I think, like, in the wake of that kind of apocalypse, it's an awkward new beginning, and I think that the kind of there's a necessary sort of distance that needs to be sort of observed between Elijah and Klaus and Hayley, which unfortunately has that sort of requisite emotional distance as well. Weirdly enough, they're in the compound, and I think 2 to 3 months I think has elapsed since we saw them last. And I think even within the creation of the ruse. Of like, I'm not with, our child has died. I think there's a true sort of tragedy in that, and so because they're kind of symbiotically experiencing this ruse together, i.e., fabricating it together, there's a collective gloom, I think, about it. And I think Elijah's the one sort of holding the reins on this chariot, saying, we are going to exact our revenge at this moment, this moment, and this moment. I think he has a real strategy and a real plan, as he always kind of does, in order to sort of usurp the kingdom, once again. But I think Klaus is probably more like a caged beast, which is one handful of difficulties. And I think Haley's probably not too different, and that she probably is going a little insane, not just being away from her kid, but wanting revenge as well. He can't afford to. At the moment, he's sacrificing to. He's leading them. He's leading them. He can't. Like, somebody has to be sort of a degree of lucidity. I don't know about that. Sometimes in the midst of mayhem, wonderful and romantic things can happen, and that's all I'll say. I don't know. Cocaine? I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it?
Right.
Like, I mean, like.
Do you think you should run away or something?
Listen, honestly, you asking me the question, like, I'm perplexed by it. Like, I'm constantly like asking the creators, because I couldn't act it after a little while. I just said I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, I don't understand this. It's too the pendulous swings of like Klaus's desires, where it took everybody else along for the ride, and I was like, that didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense to me because no one seemed to be trying to wrangle any kind of position, And I'm with you. I totally agree with you that why does he endure it? And I just had to make it a disease. I had to make it his disease. Because who in their right mind over the course of a millennium would like support this creature, so I made him sort of like, somebody who has a drug addict in the family, someone who's an enabler. You see that on those shows all the time. What's the show called? Intervention. Yeah, thank you. Those shows are so silly, but you see parents kind of constantly who are like, well, he seems so upset, so I let him in the house, and look, I just gave him $20 because he needed, I feel like that's sort of Elijah, like, who sort of holds out hope for this small part of him that might be a glorious king, but truthfully, I think even the most ardent fans of Klaus know that he's not great king material. He just isn't. Like, what kind of king? He's not going to be Solomon. He's not going to be Solomon. He's going to be a tyrant. Like, no matter what. Like, even if he has periods of being good, he's going to be awful pretty soon. That's kind of why we love him. So Elijah's going to be this. Like, it's like, what does Obi-Wan Kenobi say to? Now I'm showing my nerddom and at Comic-Con.
Oh, about Vader?
Yeah, no. Obi-Wan Kenobi says to Han Solo and Star Wars, he says, who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him? And that applies to Klaus and Elijah. I closed on a nerd quote.